Good evening, and welcome to Soluble, America's Political Central. We're going to discuss, of course, the 2024 election. As never before, all of this year, leading up to November, the 4th, 6th, whichever one of those days is Election Day. And today we just thought that we would highlight what could possibly be a new abnormal if we don't show up to the polls this coming election, if we don't show up. A new abnormal, which is what the former president has brought to the halls of Washington, D.C. Now, we know that these hallowed halls and these hallowed institutions were already having trouble. The American people had, began to lose faith in government, but lose faith in, the government's ability to be able to work together as far as parties working across the aisles. And so, it was easily to get a shakeup with the magnitude that it was former President Donald J. Trump. And, thus began a new abnormal. Now, we begin to see it on the campaign trail. We saw, patriotic veterans being mocked, the disabled being mocked. We saw, blatant racism, biasness, bigotry, misogyny. We saw the okaying, if you will, of sexual assault, the lessening of the effect of it, the lessening of the seriousness of sexual assault. We saw a candidate and former candidate before then president Donald J. Trump, issuing to his followers support, in threats for violence on the campaign trail against any of those who would speak out against him. Now, personally, here at Soluble, we thought that the former president's ending would come, when we seen him live on air mock the disabled. Our position at that time and the conclusion that we draw was that, that was it. He was toast. That would be the final straw, as far as American voters were concerned, and, the limits that they were willing to go to, the things that they were willing to put up with in deciding a nominee from the Republican Party for president of the United States. And so the doubt crept in, the apprehension crept in, the secretive joy crept in to a lot of hearts of American voters to start to realize and hope that, the former president wouldn't make it into the Oval Office. But lo and behold, in spite of the insults, the mockery, and all the things that we've just mentioned, the former president became the 45th commander-in-chief of the United States of America. Now, we know what we got in those 4 years. And as Democratic voters, common sense independents, and those Republicans who, for the sake of country, who for the love of country, crossed the aisles, we saw what we were getting. We saw what we got in those 4 years. And so, even though 2020 came and went, and we selected a new commander-in-chief, we saw the former president for the first time in history, something totally unprecedented, where we had a former president who wouldn't accept the results, concede to his rival, and let's close ranks as a country and move forward as one United States of America. And so the new abnormal had a lock, so to speak, on the American psyche. We started to, if we weren't careful, to become numb to this new way of government. This up in your face, say what I feel type of political style, which, a lot of times when you're dealing with foreign adversaries, foreign powers, it's great. It's good to wield the bully pulpit in the way that, puts America first and lets our foreign adversaries know that, America's going to be protected by any means necessary. Now, we have to deal with what we have. I mean, and at this point in time, to my Democrats and common sense independents out there, we're controlling 2/3 of government power with an election on the horizon. Now, up to this point, it hasn't been said that, from our colleagues across the aisle, when once upon a time, there was a time where Democrats were in power and Republicans were not, where they would say that, the president was doing a good job, but we can do better. Those times have long gone, as we know it. So welcome to the new abnormal. But here's the good news. We have the power, as we've seen in the 2020 elections. We have the power and we have the numbers, which creates that power to take this abnormal and turn it back into the American norm. So many things that happened, as I said, that were abnormal, that we never saw on the campaign trail when the former president was running for office, which, for reasons that we can't understand, created a lot of popularity among Republican voters, obviously, because the president won the nomination over a lot of household names, for him to be, a first-time runner, contested for the office of president of the United States. The president trumped the field. And so, the new abnormal sprang out of the president's willingness to say things that, weren't true, that were far right, that were un-American, that showed no resemblance of compassionate conservatism. And so, it begs the question, one, what are the Republican voters so fed up with, to the point that they would throw their votes, throw their support around the kind of candidate and later to be named 45th president of the United States of America that the former president became? Going into office, a new abnormal. A president who doesn't like to go over his daily intelligence reports. A new abnormal. A former president who praised America's foreign adversary on the world stage, going against the intelligence of his own agencies, of his own CIA. A new abnormal. A president of the United States of America, a former president with members of an administration who have close family ties, reeking of nepotism, who don't even have security clearances to be assessing or much less be around classified information. A new abnormal. Now, it's easy to get complacent, which we thank the heavens that Democrats did not do. But here we are again with the former president being a serious threat. Now, we saw the debates last night, and nothing has changed. It seems as if, both of these candidates, including Ramaswamy, even though he wasn't on the stage, are, kowtowing, catering, rehearsing, if you will, for a second place finish or as a job of vice president, as a runner up to the eventual nominee. Each one of them accused each other of lying. Each one of them took shots at the other one's leadership, in their administrative positions that they've held, whether it was ambassador at the United Nations or whether it was former Ambassador Haley attacking Governor DeSantis on, his record as governor of the state, attacking him on the state of the state with insurance rate, high costs for living in the state of Florida, which some of it wasn't factually correct. But our point is this. While our Republican colleagues on the right continue to bicker amongst themselves, trying to sell themselves and or make the case to the American people that he or she is what's best, moving America forward. We have to realize, that this new abnormal happens right under our noses. And if we're not paying attention, we can easily be brainwashed, because, for example, Governor DeSantis, makes a statement last night that, during the Biden administration, in these short 3+ years, 3.5 years or what have you, that, 8 million people have crossed the southern border illegally. This is just a number that is not backed up with facts, with no factual evidence. It's just a number that's put out there, hoping the voters will go for it, not do their own research, and, the scare tactic will work to the point where, you would have an American voter say, I need to vote for Republicans because President Biden, is the border is wide open and he's not doing anything about it. Part of the new abnormal. And this is where, the former president, you see, traces of his type of leadership that still lingers in the Republican Party. To put out a number, as far as who is coming across and how often, without any factual evidence, it's a false statement. But that's the new abnormal that the former president has generated. And it originated from him where, if he says it, it's bound to be law. It's bound to be factual in the eyes of Republican voters. And they don't really care to do their research because, you have Republican politicians who are speaking their language. So whether it's backed up by factual evidence or not, they don't care. All they know that, he's speaking their language. And as Democrats, we have to be concerned about the southern border also. But we have to do it with, preciseness, honesty, taking, a long, frank, candid look at the southern border and bringing our ideals to the floor that we feel like will, better secure the southern border. And this is where, being the bigger party comes into play. Because if we're not careful, we could get caught up in a tit for tat. But as sure as we're sitting here tonight, here at Soluble, there is a new abnormal that's brewing. And as Democrats, we have the power to stop it. We have the power to stop it. Now, you will hear Republicans say, whether they're running for office or whether they're, in the Senate or the Congress, the Biden economy is killing us. It is hurting Americans. The president is weak on, foreign policy. Inflation is taking over. But the perception is not meeting the reality, ladies and gentlemen. The perception is not meeting the reality. when economists have taken a look at end of the year indicators for the year 2023, inflation, is being tamed slowly but surely. The president is winning the battle against inflation, listening to his advisors, listening to the Fed, who are at the Treasury, telling him, here's the best move to make. But we no need to get caught up in what Republican politicians are saying versus what we here at Sawyer was saying, versus what Democrats on the House floor or the Senate floor may be saying. The numbers don't lie. And so we have to look at the numbers. Now, leading up to November, another thing we have to look at that we're threatened with as the new abnormal, that, is anything but working across the aisles to get things done for we the people. And that is endless investigations. Endless investigations. Now, it's not to say that Democrats are soft or that, Democrats are not paying attention. They let Republicans run all over them. And I say that to say this: you don't see the level of investigation coming from Democratic majorities when they have them. I mean, if there's something there, case in point, the former president, when it comes to handling of classified material, this is the only thing right now that we see that's at the federal level. And what may or may not have been his role in the January 6th insurrection. These are the two things. What's going on in New York is at the state level. If I'm not mistaken, what's going on in Georgia, where the president had to participate in Mugshotville, this is at the state level. This is at the state level. So when it is called for the federal government to react, they have reacted. They have reacted in an appropriate manner, not being overhanded, but at the same time not being slack to that in a way that would allow the former president to further think that he is above the law. And other than that, we don't see our Democratic politicians wasting taxpayers' money with investigations to nowhere. Now, this new abnormal of fruitless, endless investigations that are leading to nothing, to nowhere, we have the power to send the message November the 4th. We have the power to send the message here. And, I can't say it enough. The president is saying it on the campaign trail. Democracy is truly on the ballot here. Democracy is truly on the ballot. I mean, here we are, fresh into a new year, as we stated on last night. And where are we? What do we get started out on? And, it takes two to tango. And, what do our Republican colleagues have that counters what the Democrats are offering, whether in the House or the Senate? What do they have? They have nothing. They have nothing. A new abnormal. You have a president who, by all accounts of the former president and all the former president's men, that we're dealing with Sleepy Joe. We're dealing with someone who is feeble, someone who is too old. But they can't attack him on the record. They can't go on the record of what President Biden has done and what he's doing. Right now, we have the former president on the campaign trail, running a campaign on revisionist history, retribution, payback. And so we have to ask ourselves as voters, who are concerned about the future of the country, what kind of lives that we want to live as American citizens. Do we want peace at home and peace abroad? Because all of these things are at stake. The new abnormal that the former president has created still lingers. You've seen it with the expulsion of Representative Santos at the end of last year. Now, all the evidence was there. Unlike our Republican colleagues, all the evidence was there that showed that former Representative Santos' conduct was worthy of expulsion. The evidence was there, clearly put out for the American people and all lawmakers to see. And you have former Representative Santos stating that this is bullying. He wouldn't go there to say a witch hunt. He went for, in spite of the evidence. And this is what we have to understand as Democrats in looking at what could be a new abnormal if we don't step up to vote. In spite of the evidence, glowing, glaring, put out for all to see, in spite of this evidence, Representative Santos still says that what this boils down to is, forget what I've done, forget what I've said, never mind how I've misled, the campaign funds and the misspending of campaign funds, don't pay any attention to that. Look at this simply as bullying. And so what does that sound like? That this is an atypical politician in the Republican Party that's made in the image of the former president. That's made in the image of the former president. And so it persists. Regrettably, it persists. This new abnormal that the former president has injected into American politics. Is it for love of country? Is it for love of power? Is it for the sake of saving the country? And if so, let the former president tell us from what? From what we're being saved from that we don't see that he sees. But there's level of political abnormality, functioning government that the former president has created that we as patriotic, loving Americans, people who are willing to serve, who have served, who can appreciate the democracy that we have, that is the envy of the world. We have to show up. We have to, right now, be ready to show up. A new abnormal. Traditionally, you see presidents with downtime, with needing to get away for the weekend. Oftentimes, they're headed to Camp David. Either right outside of Maryland, somewhere there. They're constantly heading to Camp David. And here you have former President Donald J. Trump. It's not good enough for him. A new abnormal. Now, we feel as if, the former president and all presidents have somewhat of a budget to make the accommodations at Camp David more comfortable, more suited to their taste while in office. But the former president doesn't want to go there. He doesn't want to go there. He wants to retreat at the expense of taxpayers now. Keep this in mind. At the expense of taxpayers. He wants to retreat to Mar-a-Lago, or Bedminster. And what we have to understand that you won't hear often enough in the media when it comes to someone who's supposedly a commander in chief who loves his country, and why won't he utilize facilities that have been utilized for generations, president after president? Why won't he go there as a patriotic, loving president? Our position here at Soluble is one of the number one reasons is that, going to this taxpayer-funded facility, this facility has been built by taxpayers' dollars. The former president can't curry favor with foreign investors, foreign dignitaries. He can't entertain, these type of people at Camp David, an official government residence. And so what is the best way to get around this? The former president is at his own properties. A new abnormal, something we've never seen before, where, you have the former president using taxpayer dollars at the taxpayer's expense, getting away every weekend or every other weekend, so many times out of the month, to go to his resorts, and curry favor on the golf course, not considering the business of the American people. But this is, what's best for the Trump organization first. With this move where, the former president cares nothing about the accommodations at Camp David. And so here's a new abnormal where the former president has put his self-interest first, as evidenced by him not, retreating to Camp David, which is what it's built for, what it's made for, a presidential retreat, to get away, to study, to get into his privacy of thinking, his quietness of thinking, if you will, to try and figure it out, whether it's foreign policy, whether it's economic challenges here at home, whether it's energy crisis. Camp David is the ideal retreat for this. But what does the former president do in this new abnormal? Retreat to his own properties, to his personal properties at the taxpayer's expense, so that he can do not the business of the American people, or not the business of America itself as a country, but the business of what's best for the Trump organization first, after he's taken an oath to serve. A new abnormal. And, we can go on and on. We can go on and on. But we feel as though, the American people are not slow to catch on to what, we're facing if we don't vote ourselves out of this once again. Once again, much to the chagrin of my fellow Democrats, common sense independents and Republicans, we have to vote ourselves out of it again. We're looking at the polls. We're looking at the candidates to see, where the numbers lie in favorability of which candidate. And the former president is right there at the top. So here at Soluble, we have to work with what we have. We have to work with what we have. And in trying to solve it, the former president has no interest whatsoever in listening to reason when it comes to policy, when it comes to America's long-standing positions in the world. You've never seen an American president, on the world stage smoozing with a dictator, whether it be China, Russia, whether it be North Korea. You've never seen this before. And, we have foreign allies and governments around the world who respect America, wondering, what is going on? What is happening in America? This is one of the central questions from our foreign allies, foreign dignitaries who would visit the country. Foreign diplomats in the UN. This was the central question. What is happening in America? And democracy, was seriously challenged. Because the former president, he put a crack, albeit small, based on his policies, based on the way that he carried himself in office. He put a crack in, that shield of democracy that is held up for so long. A new abnormal. And so, the question for tonight, to Democrats, common sense, and the independents and Republicans, can we vote ourselves out of it? Can we vote ourselves out of it? We did it before for the sake of the country. We did it. And, let's not look at it with regret, but with enthusiasm and or zeal. Zealous, in the defense of democracy, and be ready to do it again. A new abnormal. We have elections that have taken place. And, once it all came out in the wash, Democrats control 2/3 of government. And, they go into office. They take office and they begin to do their job. And they're doing things that Republicans are frowning upon. And even though the elections have been held, the Republican Party and Republican politicians are coming forth to say, we shouldn't do this. That government shouldn't do this, because it divides the country, and we should wait and let the voters decide. As Democrats, it would be not serving our due diligence in our service to the country, whether we're office holders, whether we're American tax-paying citizens. We wouldn't be doing our due diligence if we was to let this type of rhetoric cause us to stymie our efforts, cause us to stop and rethink what we're doing for the sake of waiting for another election that we're sure to win. And that's what this is. It's only to create doubt, create, a hesitancy for you to be willing to stick behind, what you voted in. Now, the president's first term is coming to an end. And there's a report card that has to be put out. Just like any student going to school, there's a report card that has to be put out for the end of these 4 years in order for the president of the United States of America to earn a second term. There's a report card that's coming soon. And, the president will be graded, rightfully so, on the economy. What grade does he get? Foreign policy. What's the grade? Issues here at home, energy policies, dealing with fossil fuels versus renewable energy, dealing with the elderly, women's rights, our veterans. And last but not least, above all, the state of the economy, the state of the union. All of these things, the president will be graded on. Now, as I've told you before, the Republicans are putting out a lot of numbers. They're making a lot of statements without factual evidence to back it up. Without factual evidence to back it up. Now, the leading economic indicators are saying that inflation is slowly but surely being tamed. And these numbers don't lie. But yet and still, you will not see the Republican Party come out and say, yeah, that is accurate. But we can do something better. It's only to bash. It's only to tear down. It's only to make you, the American voter, think that anything that comes out of the Biden administration is doom and gloom for the American economy, for the sake of America's well-being. And so, it boils down to, what are you hearing from our colleagues across the aisle versus what you're seeing for yourselves? A new abnormal. A former president, and like I said, who scorned, who looked upon Camp David with scorn, which has been the ideal president retreat. Because, and he's good at it. He will say that, it is run down. It's not my style. Everything is old and outdated. When he has a budget to change that. But yet, it's a good excuse to use. It's a great excuse to use in order to use your own properties to curry favor, to still make millions for the Trump organization, to put the Trump organization first. Now, if you let the former president tell it, he has very intelligent children with high IQ levels, and they're very smart, very business savvy. But would the former president, turn all business over to the children? On paper, yes. On paper, yes. But yet, the first chance he gets to retreat, to get away from all the hustle and bustle of, being president of the United States of America, to get away to a retreat so he could think, so he can reflect, on, am I doing what's best for country? Can I do better? What areas can I do better in? Where am I weak? Where am I strong? The former president wasn't interested. A new abnormal for American commanders in chief. A new abnormal to get away on a retreat and push the business of America aside and move to the front of the line the business of the Trump organization. This is the new abnormal that we were dealing with in those 4 years. You have, evangelicals. They're coming out, on the campaign trail, and they're making the statement that, the former president, he's a godsend. He's someone who's been sent by God, to lead the country. A new abnormal. Here at Soluble, we haven't seen the former president on a regular basis, whether in office or not. We haven't seen him at Sunday Mass on a regular basis. We don't see him attending Sunday services on a regular basis. But we have the evangelical right telling us that the former president is, someone sent by divine intervention. Does someone who has been sent by divine intervention, sow seeds of discord, outright lie, engage in, sexual abuse of women, commit fornication with women of porn star type caliber? Is this, the mark of a faithful man, of a man who holds his faith near and dear? A new abnormal. You've had the former president come out, on the campaign trail and make the statement that the Bible is his favorite book. He's made this statement. You could do your research. If I'm not mistaken, Jonathan Carr was the media personality, that he made this statement to. And, if my memory serves me correct, Jonathan Carr asked him, did he have a favorite passage or favorite scripture that stood out that he would like to quote? Nothing. Nothing. Now, here's the former president who says that the Bible is his favorite book. But the things that, lie within when it comes to, God's law, things that, God frown upon. We don't see the former president practicing it. We don't see the former president practicing it. On Sunday morning, when it comes to attending mass, attending the services of whatever his faith is, we see the former president constantly on the golf course. Now, we could give him the benefit of the doubt if we seen, a member of the clergy right there beside him, on the 19th green, on the 18th green. We could give him the benefit of the doubt. And so, here's a new abnormal to the fifth power, where we have the evangelicals, the evangelical right, telling us that, this former president has been sent by divine intervention. Now, we know that in the Bible, in the good book, that, the Almighty God has used, flawed individuals. But he's used them to carry out, his envisions of moving things forward for the sake of getting rid of evil people, uplifting, those who have been misled and things of that nature. Here's a flawed individual that we're not saying that the evangelical right has it totally wrong. But we don't see the conversion. We don't see where, the Holy One of Israel is moving within the former president's spirit. When we look at what's going on the southern border, of course, we need a secure border, that will not compromise our territorial boundaries. We can't have that as a country. But these are human beings at the end of the day. These are human beings. And you have the former president, talking about immigrants in terms as if they were, on the same level as animals, on the same level as, the beasts of the field. A new abnormal for a former president who curries heavily favor with the evangelical right. And as I said, even though he's a flawed individual, we've seen it. We've seen it, throughout the Bible. Flawed individuals who God has used to carry out his purposes. But we haven't seen, to this degree, a flawed individual who has lived within the scriptures, that has lied to the people, that has sown seeds of discord amongst the people, that has, created a situation within the boundaries of America where, one racial group attacks another. We don't see this through flawed leadership of prophets or people that God has used in the Bible. And here we are in this new abnormal. Could the former president be the second coming of Christ? Our position here at Soluble is that it's highly unlikely. Our position is that it's highly unlikely. But, with our colleagues on the right, with our Republican voters, with the evangelical right, you know, regardless of the fact that the former president has not attended Sunday Mass or Sunday services on a regular basis, he's still being heavily favored by the evangelical right. And to be a president of a compassionate heart, to be that king for a day, if you will, in these 4 years. In this new abnormal, the former president is in office. And in my lifetime, and if we stand corrected here at Soluble, we welcome the correction. But in my lifetime, I haven't seen a president or former president take inmates who are on death row at the federal level and kill them on a regular basis. Kind of like this off with his head type of attitude. A new abnormal. President Biden has been in office now it's approaching 4 years. Are there no more federal inmates on death row? I don't think that's the case. But here we have a president who is looking with compassion within the norms that have, existed forever, where, it's troublesome to be able to have to make that call, to end someone's life. It's not an easy decision. It's a decision that can keep you up late at night. But the former president, we're gonna dig into this and look at the facts. We can't give you an accurate number right now, but we know that it was on more than one occasion. And we know that you, the American people, realize it also. A new abnormal. Killing federal inmates left and right. Yes, they were on death row. But, it shows a lack of empathy. It shows, where, once again, the former president is trying to make a name for himself versus, exercising compassion, exercising caution, taking, time to consider the fact that he's getting ready to end someone's life just with the nod of his head. A new abnormal. You've never seen, in my lifetime, I haven't seen a president, current or former, kill federal inmates who are on death rows, keep in mind, who are on death row, but kill these federal inmates with such ease. With such ease. On one hand, he's killing federal inmates. On the other hand, he's pardoning, convicted criminals. This is the new abnormal that, we are flirting with if we don't come out on election day. We can give you reasons from now up until election day of why it's important, but nothing more than to, get the American people, the American voter, to look at what is a new abnormal. A new abnormal that we could be threatened with for another 4 years. Where are the hate groups? Where are the Oath Keepers? Where are the Proud Boys? Why don't they exist within the Biden administration to go mainstream? To go mainstream and come out, and insert themselves into the American public to say that, here we are. And we're going to make this thing right again, for those who put in the work, for those who found it, for the greatest murderers. And those who took the chances to go and dig all the gold. Where are they? Now, they're lingering. to answer the question. They're lingering, and they're hoping that the former president comes back into power and the new abnormal can continue. This is just a few samples, that we've mentioned. Violation of the Emoluments Clause. You have a former president who's running the country with acting administrators. The vast majority of his administration is actors, or there are vacancies that haven't been filled after a person has either resigned or been fired because of a disagreement with the former president. A new abnormal. A new abnormal. So, with an administration that is fractured, with the Trump administration that is in tatters, people are missing, people are acting without the right qualifications. It's very well possible that, the Chinese government could have slipped COVID-19 right into America. It's very much possible. Because you have a president who knows it all and an administration full of actors. And when COVID-19 hits, they're clueless. He's scrambling. He's recommending that you drink bleach. He's bringing out voodoo doctors to say that there's a cure. He's pointing the finger at the Obama administration of all people. And he's so smart. He's going to keep such smart people around him. He's such a smart and bright, brilliant businessman. And here's COVID-19 wreaking havoc on the American public. And one of the things that the former president does is says that, he points the finger at the Obama administration and says that they left the shelves empty. While, President Obama has created boards that are there to prevent pandemics from having, worldwide outbreaks. And former President Trump has canceled it all and taken it away. But yet, here he goes, where the buck should stop with him. He's pointing the finger at the Obama administration and saying that, they left the shelves empty. And thereby, they've tied our hands. And this is one of the reasons why, COVID-19 is spinning out of control. The new abnormalities will destroy American democracy. Former Congresswoman Liz Cheney knows it. Former Senator Jeff Flake knows it. Former Congressman Bob Corker knows it. Ousted Speaker Kevin McCarthy knows it. Soon to resign and or retire Joe Buck of Colorado knows it. And you would think that, these country-loving, patriotic Republican politicians would not run for cover, would not let such a weak, small-minded person like the former President Trump cause them to run for cover. You would think that they would be ready to stand up and toe the line in defense of American democracy and the republic. But the former president has caused them to tuck tail and run and duck and run for cover. A new abnormal is the course that we're chartered upon if we don't come out and rock the vote for 2024. Now, this blue wave is a realistic wave. When we're speaking here at Soluble, we're hoping that our main audience is that 90-something plus percentile of African American voters who are paying attention. Now, who would have thought it? All those hundreds of years ago, we would be at this point in the future of American history, that we would be at this point where, that large block of African American voters would be called upon to save American democracy as we know it, as we know it, as the melting pot that we are, as the land of immigrants that we are. Who would have thought? And so, that's where the power lies. That is where, the deciding factor in this race is going to be made. And this is why our colleagues on the right, at the state levels are doing any and everything they can to make it harder for you to cast your ballot. You would think that they would run on the issues. That's the norm. Not to shut down polling places, shorten early voting days, making changes to mail-in balloting. A new abnormal. A new abnormal. If the country is right of center, let the vote be held and the chips fall where they may. But here's the new abnormal. You have the former president calling on his supporters to show up at voting precincts on election day. For what? For what? You would think that, the former president would be enthused about an idea such as this because he has produced evidence, that was gathered based on the outcome of the last election. But as we know, the former president put the baseless accusations out there that the election was stolen. And when he went before the courts, they simply asked for the evidence. And the former president could produce none. His legal team could produce none. And so, as part of a new abnormal, they were all willing, to go to the chopping block for the former president. And right now, they make up Mugshotville in Atlanta, Georgia. They're copping pleas. They're going broke. And regrettably, still stubbornly clinging to the false claim that the 2020 election was stolen. A new abnormal. You have a former president who, because he can't stand to lose, creates this new abnormal where we have an attack on the Capitol while elected officials are going about doing the people's business. Something we've never seen before. A new abnormal. And the former president sits and watches it from the comfort of the Oval Office, while he's smiling and eating cheeseburgers and throwing plates against the wall. A new abnormal. We have the power as the people to stop it, hopefully once and for all. But, the handwriting is on the wall and it's very clear. We need to send a message once again. And not just here and now with the former president, Donald J. Trump. Each and every time that democracy as we know it is threatened, that, along comes a radical politician who moves our institutional norms, to the point where they're off the grid. We have to stand up. We have to come out, there are those who have come before us, who have paved the way, simply as American citizens, that, if we don't show up on election day to put a stop to this once again, then we would have let all of that work been in vain. All of that struggle would have been in vain. All of that hard work to, make democracy fair and equal to each and all American citizens would have been in vain if we don't stand up, once again to this new abnormal that the former president is trying to continue with no respect for the rule of law, with no respect for governmental institutional norms and the way they operate. A new abnormal where we have a former president who, by his own account, sees that everything that the government is doing is rigged or is wrong or it is, not good for the world. And we know that, these statements are anything but. Anything but, statements that are based on fact and in truth. And so, where do we go? The ballot box, to our local voting precincts on election day. Now is the time more than ever to get your voting house in order as Democrats, independents, and common sense Republicans. If you're going to do mail-in ballots, make sure your address is correct. Make sure you filled out all the forms correctly, because, in red states, and it's sad to say, they're going to be looking for, each and every grammatical error and any excuse in the book to take your vote and throw it out as fraudulent or non-existent or where we can't count it because, of a slight inaccuracy. So get ready. If you're going to go out and vote on election day, know where your voting precinct is at. If you moved from between now and the last election, make sure that new address is turned in on time, filled out on time. We have new Democratic voters coming on the rolls who weren't able to vote in the last election. We must keep them informed. Not to say that they're not already informed, but we have a lot at stake here. The war in the Middle East, the situation in Ukraine, global warming is having a major effect on the continent. The economy, there's always room for improvement. And we have so much work to do. And this work, and to all my fellow Democrats, hear me out real good. This work is way more important than meaningless investigations. If there's an investigation on the level of Senator Menendez, who is a Democrat, by the way, that investigation has to happen. We have to see that through. But as Democrats, we can walk and chew gum at the same time. We can hold Senator Menendez accountable and still do the business of the people. Unlike the new abnormal that we see from our colleagues on the right, where in spite of all the good that the president is doing, the one thing that they can, the one thing that they're going to do in spite of what the president is doing in his work for, the betterment of America, is to go after the president's child. Now, he's already suffered tragedy in losing a child. How low are our Republican colleagues willing to go? How low? You have the president's son, Hunter, who has been found guilty in the state of California for something with dealing with his taxes and purchasing a firearm. And now we can all sleep better at night, knowing that America is safer now that Hunter's being held accountable. Folks, this new abnormal will only set America back, if not destroy democracy altogether. So we come to you here at Soluble, bringing facts, keeping all things as it relates to the business of the people relevant, and, exposing the hypocrisy, exposing the falsehoods, and speaking truth to power. That's what we do, and that's what we're here for, in order to bring a sensible, solution, a more working across the aisles, if you will, to our politicians up on Capitol Hill, whether they are Democrat or Republican. That's our stated goal. So our caucuses are here; they're upon us. Right now, we're waiting for the results, but by all indicators, our guy, President Joseph R. Biden, will be, running the same race again against former President Donald J. Trump. In spite of the flawed individual that he is, this is the Republican voters' guy. And so our job is to beat him soundly, beat him once again, and hopefully beat him back down to Mar-a-Lago, where he will stay permanently and, give up on the idea of ever, being the most powerful man in the world again, who is, a total threat to humanity, which, we say with a heavy heart here at Soluble, because at the end of the day, we want American presidents to succeed and do good, whether they are of the Democrat or Republican stripe. But we have to call it like we see it. And, the former president is a clear and present danger to American democracy. And here at Soluble, we will do everything that we can to expose him through debate and commentary with you, the American people. That's going to do it for tonight's broadcast. We thank you for joining us. We look forward to continuing this discussion, on a daily basis leading up to the vote in November. And we're here to keep you informed and keep you aware of all of the political happenings that are going on in Washington, to expose the hypocrisy, the bad policy, and the lack of working together, if you will, regardless of what side of the aisle that is coming from. So until we see you again, this is Soluble signing off. We thank you for joining us tonight, and we look forward to continuing this conversation. So until the next time, this is Soluble signing off. Thank you for joining us. Good night, and God bless. Thank you.